Hey, I'm Ange.
And I'm Beck.
And we are the Gold Diggers, because we believe there's gold found in everyone.
Everyone is unique, interesting and exciting with a great story to share.
And we aim to find it.
The question is, can we rise to the challenge and strike gold? Stay tuned to find out as we chat to today's mystery guest.
Honey, you're my sugar.
So this is how it works. One of us knows our mystery guest and the other doesn't. And today it's Beck's turn.
Yes, it is.
To discover the gold in our special guest, Nerilee. Welcome, Nerilee.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's Nerilee Souter, isn't it?
That's right.
That's how we pronounce it. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Nerilee.
You too, Beck.
Thanks for coming on the show.
So what we usually do is I just give Beck a little bit about you and then send her out of the room. I love kicking her out of the room.
Yeah,
it's kind of the highlight of the podcast, to be honest.
I'm getting used to it.
So Nerilee, 61,
Yes.
is single, never been married, born in New Zealand and grew up in Brisbane.
Lovely.
So there we go.
Okay, so I shall leave.
Honey, you're my sugar.
Let's talk about it. No, let's talk about you.
Oh, okay.
Because Nerilee, as I said, you know, you've single all your life, but really because you've dedicated your life to a cause that you're really passionate about, and that is your gold, is the fact that you really want to make a difference in the world, and you have completely dedicated your entire life to this. And I know you've put yourself into some very risky and dangerous situations, which I'm really looking forward to getting into with Beck. So that is your goal, that you're passionate about making a difference in the world.
Yeah.
So let's bring Beck back in and we'll see what she can unpack.
Honey, you're my sugar.
So I'm going to ask a really random question to begin with. What is the best holiday you've ever taken?
Good question.
Oh.
I don't even know where this is going to go, but I thought, hey, let's just throw it out there and see what happens.
A holiday, because I've travelled a lot,
Yes.
but had very few holidays. So
Okay.
my most favourite holiday was probably going and sailing around the Greek islands on a yacht.
Oh, my goodness.
Ooh, that
And
sounds
that
nice.
happened just before COVID, so we just got that
Oh,
in.
my goodness.
It was for my nephew's 21st birthday.
Yeah.
So I went over with my sister. I invited myself, went over with my sister and brother-in-law and their family, and we sailed around on a yacht for a week,
That's
exploring the
amazing.
islands. Loved it.
That would have been beautiful.
Don't suffer with seasickness.
I do, and that was a concern, but we stayed. We didn't go right out to the
Yeah.
outer islands where the seas can get rough. We kind of stayed to the islands closer to the mainland, so it was pretty calm.
Yeah.
The first night I got a little bit sick,
Yeah.
but going across the shipping channel, but
Yeah.
apart from that, that was it.
And you adjust fairly quickly, you find your sea legs.
Yes, yeah.
Did you do much on land adventuring?
Yeah, so each night the yacht pulled in to an island port and
Yeah.
we got off, explored for the afternoon and then a bit the morning and then headed off to the next island.
So you said that you've done a lot of travelling in your life, but not so much holidaying. So where have you travelled?
You're good, Beck. You
Yeah,
picked that
she
up.
is
Wow.
good. She's getting straight in there.
She is.
So I worked with an organisation for 14 years where I took teams around the world for 2 to 3 months at a time.
Right.
So over a 14-year period, I think, probably been into over 22 countries.
Wow. Can you name some of
And
them?
Russia,
Wow.
the US, of course, Israel, throughout Southeast Asia, Iraq
Wow.
was one of my most exciting places to go to.
Right.
Jordan, Italy.
And what were these teams doing?
So I was part of an organisation called Youth with a Mission, or YWAM.
Ah, yes.
And we went over there as part of their program. They came in and did a training school, and part of the program is to go on a team trip
Right.
on one of these projects. So we'd go into, so there were countries or areas that we went into that the tourists don't normally go into.
Yeah.
So areas where we just went into the village or a town to see what the needs were, and then we just worked with the people for
Amazing.
weeks at a time.
So when you say Iraq was the most exciting one, can you tell me what happened in Iraq?
So we had this small window opportunity. It was just after Saddam Hussein had been captured.
Oh, yes.
So the American army were basically running the country. There was no rules because there was no police, there was no government in power. So it was just a wild time and an exciting time too. But when people weren't obeying the rules if you wanted to go that way, instead of going around the roundabout, you could kind of just cut across. And
Oh, my goodness.
they were just doing all sorts of
Bit chaotic?
things. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was kind of organised chaos.
Okay. Just a whole bunch of excited people
Yeah,
making their own rules up.
yeah, that's
Wow.
that's exactly what the time was. But it was like being in a war movie because there
Right.
was all American soldiers everywhere
Yeah.
and tanks going up and down the street. So it was kind of in winter, so there was always there was a fog,
Yeah.
and then you see all these tanks go, and then these army guys running all over the streets with their guns. And
Was it frightening at all, seeing all the guns and tanks?
I wasn't,
Yeah.
because I have a bit of an adventurous adrenaline kind of
I can see that
thing.
spark in your eye right now.
Because even when we arrived in Baghdad, there was a loud explosion of some sort while we were driving in, and the driver's going, get on the floor of the car. And I'm like, where's my camera? And I'm getting out,
wanna
looking out the
watch.
window to try and take a photo of whatever it was.
Oh,
But
wow.
I didn't see it.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
I would have been freaking out. Like, you just as calm.
Yeah. And there was another morning I was lying in my bed in the room. Everyone else was still asleep and I was reading. Next thing, there was this loud explosion and all the windows started shaking, and there was a suicide bomber just down the next block.
No way.
Killed 5 people, I think.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So when did all this adventuring start for you, and how did it start? So obviously you must have had something in you that was seeking adventure from a young age.
It's funny because I wasn't the adventurous type
Yeah.
to start with, but I just felt when I was 18 that I wanted to go and do something overseas that made a difference,
Yeah.
but I didn't know what that was. So when I was about 20, I think it was, I took myself over to Papua New Guinea by myself, but I had a connection over there.
Yeah.
So I stayed with a director of a mission flight service called MAF.
Yeah.
And they took me all over New Guinea and just dropped me off in different stations, like just where there's just one Westerner working with the Papua New Guineas. And so they just dropped me off there for a few days, and I would live in the community there and watch what they did, and then the plane would come pick me up and drop me off somewhere else.
That would have been fascinating. for
I
you to learn
loved
the
it.
Culture.
I wish I'd had someone with me to do the experience with.
Yeah. Share the memories.
Yeah, and the memory and the scary parts and all that kind of stuff.
Because you just seem to have this propensity for like war zones or really
I
dangerous
seem to,
countries.
don't I?
What scary parts do you remember from that first trip?
Oh, that New Guinea? I remember going into one station, it just had an airstrip, and when I got off the plane, I was actually motion sick because it was quite a bumpy trip and only a little plane. And I got off, and there was one Australian woman there. Her husband was normally there, but he was off in some other village. And it was just all these Papua New Guinea people there just coming in and out of the house. And then they took me through a trip through the hospital.
Yeah.
And it's nothing like skewer or anything like that. It was just kind of a wooden house. And they said to me, tonight there should be a birth. Do you want to come and see the birth? We can wake you up and you can come over. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But it didn't happen that night anyway, so
Yeah.
I didn't do it. But
Must have been some amazing experiences throughout your life. What were some of the other places that you visited? And I was going to ask this before, how big are the groups that you take over?
they were all different size groups, anything from 7 to 30 may have been my largest one.
Yeah. And I'm just going to jump back because I forgot to ask you, how did you go from that beginning trip to then getting into YWAM?
Yes. So when I came back from Papua New Guinea, I thought, I do love the going to other countries, but I couldn't see myself doing it full time,
Yeah.
like moving over and living, especially as a single.
Yeah.
So I kind of let it drop for a while, and then one day I was at work and I saw a brochure on someone's desk at work, and it was talking about these discipleship training schools with Youth with a Mission,
Yeah.
and it was on a desk, and I thought, oh man, this looks exciting. This looks like something that I'd like to do, and it had a outreach phase to it.
Yeah.
So I went over and did that for 6 months, and then they invited me to come on staff.
Yeah.
So then every year I had to then take teams over to these amazing countries and have these amazing experiences
Wow.
during that time.
I'm just curious, like, so you go to Iraq, you're with a team, you're team leader, and then there's suicide bombers on the next block. How do you prepare somebody for that, to be going to these kind of places and carry the responsibility that you would have for other people?
The biggest issue is preparing their parents to let them go.
Yes.
I can imagine.
But because, it's a faith organisation, we prayed and felt like that was something that we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And we were working very closely with people who we knew who were already working over there. So we knew that the responsibility of keeping us safe was on their hands, and they knew the area and stuff.
Yeah.
Except there was one particular time in Iraq, we were going on a trip up to Mosul, I think it was, which is biblical Nineveh.
Yeah.
Right.
And we were going up there, and we went off for the weekend, and there was a lot of army tanks out on some of the towns that we were going through, and soldiers running through the towns. And we got up there, had a great experience, and then we come back, and I read my emails when we got back to Baghdad, and one of the emails says, please don't go up to Mosul. There's a lot of issues happening in towns along the way, and the army's involved and stuff like that, so don't go.
Did you write back?
But
and
it was
say,
too
"Sorry,
late.
just
I'd
got
already
this."
gone.
Already
Wow.
been. Wow.
Yeah, but I'm glad that I didn't see the email, because we had a great time up there,
Yeah.
just visiting with families and sitting with, people that have had a totally different world experience to what any of us have ever had.
Yeah. And what do you take with you to impart to these areas when you take the group? Is there something that they do in these places to help the community?
Whatever the need is at the time, sometimes it might be praying for them, sometimes it's getting in the village and doing whatever. Then we went to Jordan. There was a village there that they were a bit hostile to Westerners.
Yeah.
And we were invited to come in and help clean up. They had this school ground where the kids played, and it's all full of glass and rubbish and everything. And we thought, this is so dangerous for the kids. So we decided that we'd get in there and clean it up. And it was the middle of winter, and it was freezing cold, and the locals were inside the building looking at us out the window, but they wouldn't talk to us.
Yeah.
They didn't want us there.
Yeah.
And then over a couple of days, they started coming out and talking to us, and we were able to share why we were really there for, and ended up building a relationship, which then opened the door for some of our staff that were working in Jordan at the time that were trying to get into this village but weren't able to.
Yeah.
And so us just getting in there and serving in the middle of winter in the
Yeah.
freezing cold, they saw something that was different in us and thought, we'll let this organisation come in.
doors.
It was an open door for the staff that were there.
Amazing. That's great. And so then that made way for more people to be able to travel into that space
Yeah.
and make more of a difference or
Yeah.
be part of that area.
Yeah.
That's great. And so these kids that you take with you, ages around
18 and up.
and up.
Yeah.
And,
And there was adults as well, like older people like me.
right. How do you find these trips affect them?
Opens their eyes. First, it gives them a view of how lucky we are in our country,
Yeah.
how other cultures live,
Yeah.
different religions, what they believe and how, they live life. Yeah, and just helping other people,
Yeah.
just going over and being hands and feet.
Yeah. I could imagine it's a real life-changing experience to do something like that. Like if one of my kids came home and said, I'd like to go to Iraq,
Yeah.
a group, I'd just be like,
I think it's something
maybe
so
please.
valuable at that age, though, to actually see how other people live. Because
Yeah.
we can become so sort of complacent
Yeah.
and that with our lifestyle and the things that we have access to be amongst communities where they struggle for, you know, sometimes basic supplies or it's actually really adds something of value, makes you grateful for what you have, but it can ignite a spark in people to actually want to dedicate their life to make a difference.
Well, that's what happened to me. You know, my trips, it was sparked. My first trip was to Russia with YWAM, and it sparked something in me, and I thought, I want to keep doing this. I don't want to go back home to my normal 9-to-5 job, you know. And so then when I was offered the position of being the team leader, I thought, I'm going to do this. And I thought I was in it for life. My plan was to be there the rest of my life, but things changed and I ended up going back into the workforce for a little while.
Right. So how long ago was that when you finished with YWAM?
2006.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what was the transition there? It's obviously like a bookmark moment in your life that then goes to the next chapter. What happened there?
So in 2006, I felt that it was time to move on from, I was based here on the Sunshine Coast, and the vision of it changed. It became more of a surfing, skating culture, which totally wasn't me. So I thought I'd either have to move to another place or stay here on the Sunshine Coast and get a job. And I just felt like it was time to hop out for a while and get a job. So I became a tour guide on the Sunshine Coast here for a few years.
Yeah.
And then I went totally random and worked for my brother-in-law in his accountancy firm, which I was totally not good at maths, always teased him about being an accountant. And then I ended up working for him for 5 years.
Wow, that's a complete change.
Yeah,
of
it was a
occupation
total
right
change.
there. And then being in an office as well,
and being
rather
in an
than
office,
outdoors.
being in an office, and it was hard. For at the beginning, I thought, I'm settled into this. That part of my life is finished.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
now this
laughing
is
because I'm thinking you've gone from taking teams into war zones to being an accountant. That's
I
like
know,
total
it
flip
was
reverse.
Totally random. And then I started getting restless and thinking, oh man, I want to get back out there.
Yeah, can imagine.
Yeah. So a friend
You
of
did
mine.
well to stay there for 5 years.
Yeah.
I know. It surprised me too.
But once travel like that, it gets into your blood, particularly when you're seeing different cultures and different parts of the world and different lifestyles. I think it does something to you that you can't just switch that off.
That's right. And actually during that time, I was taking teams on my holidays to Cambodia.
Yeah.
Right.
So, whenever I had a holiday, I ended up getting into debt with holidays.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to keep taking teams over there. But,
Wow.
so I was doing that while I was working in the accountancy, which kind of gave me a bit of that
Yeah. Fed that desire for adventure.
desire for the travel and adventure again.
Yeah. So what happened once you finished that 5 years in accountancy?
While I was working there, a friend of ours, mutual friend of Angie's and I, came to me and said that she wanted to go on a trip overseas, and she'd heard my stories and said, do you want to organise a trip for us so that we can go and see another culture, or she can go and experience another culture? So another friend of mine here on the coast was taking teams to Cambodia at the time, and I said to her what we wanted to do. So she gave me her contacts and what she'd been doing in Cambodia. So I set up a 2-week trip.
Yeah.
And this friend of ours, or two friends of ours. So we went over to Cambodia and I set this 2-week trip up. And Destiny Rescue was one of the places that we worked in for a couple of days in their daycare centre that they had in Phnom Penh at the time.
Yeah.
So just for the purpose of, our listeners, explain what Destiny Rescue is.
So it's an anti-trafficking organisation. So I'm now working for Destiny Rescue. I've been there for 9 years. And we rescue children out of sexual exploitation and help them to stay free.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that came a little after my first trip to Cambodia with these friends. And we're working a couple of days with Destiny Rescue there, and then as we're travelling through Cambodia, we're visiting homes that had rescued girls in it from sex trafficking. And while I was there, I just got such a heart for the cause, and I knew when I left that there was going to be something more, that one day I'd be working in that arena. And I even felt that I'd be taking teams back to Cambodia and giving them a similar experience to what I was having at that time.
Yeah.
And I had no idea how that was going to happen, what it looked like, what job offers that type of thing. And then it was about 3 years later, I was going into the church that I was attending at the time, and there was a Destiny Rescue vehicle out the front. And I was walking in with someone, and I said, I'm going to work with them one day. And then when I went in there, another friend said, oh, that's the CEO of Destiny Rescue over there. You should go and have a chat with him. So I did. And then we just kept talking for about a year. And then one day he came to me and said, there's a position that's come available. Did I want it? And it was the team trip manager for Destiny Rescue. So I was taking teams over to Cambodia and doing exactly what I did with our friends, getting paid for it, and getting involved with, exploited children. And
wow, amazing. I can imagine that that's a really challenging area, isn't it, to be working in. I can imagine you've seen a lot of, I guess, horrible things as well as some amazing rescues. Is there any of those that you can talk about?
I haven't been involved in too many of the rescues. I've been on a few trips over there where I've gone out with the rescue agents on the nights. And the worst part of it is seeing Australian men and Western men over there and exploiting the girls in the bars. That's been the hardest thing to cope with.
What ages are we looking at of the girls?
So we work with under 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
But there's all ages working in there.
And are you building relationship with the girls while they're still working? Yeah.
Yeah, so our agents are going in there, posing as customers, wanting a good night out. But what they're doing is scoping the area to see if any of them are underage. And if they think that a girl's underage, they'll call her over and sit with her and kind of spend some time getting to know her, playing little games with her to build the trust. And then when they feel that they've got the trust with her, then they will take her outside to a McDonald's or to a marketplace where there's a lot of people around and she feels safe, and then they'll offer her a way out.
Right.
So that's one of the ways we rescue. There's about 4 different types of rescues that we're doing now.
So what is some of the tricks that traffickers would use to entice kids?
You just reminded me of a story. It's one that I share in my presentations, and it's a young girl who lived in a village, and her family were unable to provide for the rest of the family, so she took it upon herself to go into the city to look for some work. Now, the city is 5 hours away from her village. She'd never been anywhere outside a village before, and the only people she knew were the people in the village. And anyway, she got a ride on the back of a truck into the city, and then the truck pulled over. She got off, feeling very afraid and alone and hungry, and she decided to go into a noodle bar to get something to eat. Well, in this noodle bar was a lady who'd been watching her get out of the truck and so forth. And when Lee walked in there, she said, oh, why are you here? You're on your own. Do you need work? Do you need a place to stay, etc.? And then Lee said to her that I had a friend from our village who left 12 months ago, and she came to the city and was able to get a job and a place to live. And she said, if I could just find her, I'd be able to maybe able to get a job with her and stay with her. So the noodle lady, picked up the phone, pretended to make a few phone calls, and then after a while put the phone down and said, I think I found your friend, come with me. So Lee followed her down the street and then across the road and then into another building and looked around. She couldn't find a friend anywhere. Next thing, she was taken up these stairs and down a hallway and shown a room. And in the room was just a bed in the corner of the room. And then she handed Lee some clothes, which consisted of a short skirt and a top, and said, this afternoon you need to rest, for tonight you will start working. And she was like, hang on a minute, I'm here to look for my friend. Anyway, her confusion, she was pretty confused at this point, and her confusion only increased when later that night men started coming to her room demanding sex from her. And then that night she ended up, being abused and exploited until one day our agents came through, spotted her, built that relationship with her to the point where they could take her out and offer her a new life.
Wow.
It just make you just not want to trust anyone. Like, how do they build that trust back? That's so hard.
That's the thing, and that's the big thing that we work with in our courses and our trauma counselling, is trying to get that trust and get them to trust our agents and our staff.
And you say like your agents came in and built the relationship with her. What are some of the other ways that they do rescues? Yeah,
so we've got that way of rescue, and we've also got a project in Nepal where we have 24 stations along the border, and we have female rescue agents there, and their job is to identify girls who have been tricked online, thinking on these dating sites online, thinking that they've met the love of their life and been promised jobs, marriage, being able to support their family as long as they can get across the border. So these girls sneak out of home, don't let their families know, get across the border. If they get across the border, they find out that it was all a trick. They end up in the hands of a pimp. And at that point, they can be trafficked anywhere across the world, and it's very hard to track them down. So we have female agents working on the border, and some of these women were tricked the same way, and we were able to rescue them, and now they're giving back and helping us out. And their job, they've been given permission by the government to stop any vehicle, any individual crossing over the border. Buses, they can get on buses and see if there's vulnerable looking girls on the bus. And then they have a series of questions that they can ask, and then eventually they find out if the girl has fallen prey to one of these predators. And then we take the girl aside. We've got a safe home there. They'll stay in the safe home under our care until we can get the parents down, usually from a village quite far away, which we fund that too, to get them down. Then we educate them all on the dangers of online dating sites and things like that, so that they can take that back to their community. And
I mean, the online space is just so easy to trick people. I mean, we see it not just in the world of trafficking. I watched that series Catfish. Anybody watch that?
No.
It just surprises me. Like, people can just take these fake identities. They have a relationship online, and and the person is completely fabricated. And then you've got this heart and emotional attachment, and then the lengths people will go to meet that other person. So it's such an easy space for traffickers to really operate. And there's no kind of policing of it at all. So is this something that kind of you guys are moving more into?
So we've got on staff now a guy who was working as a detective in Auckland, New Zealand, in the anti-trafficking space. So now he's training our staff and bringing this to Destiny Rescue. And he's also got hold of we've got access to this technology that was used in during the Bali bombings to track down the terrorists during there. And we have access to this now where we can see where people are swapping images, photos, videos online on cyber world, and eventually track them down to the place of residence, and then go in and arrest them and get the child out.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so this is new, and we've just recently trained a whole lot of the police in Thailand on this very technology.
Great.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's a growing growing.
It's good
area
to see
for
that
us.
those technologies are coming out, because I think it's going to help the modern world in lots of areas, because there's so many scams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where technology is used to trap them, they're using technology to save them. So that's good.
Talking of scams, I met a guy. We had a meeting one day on Zoom, and there was a young boy who came on the Zoom call with us, and he was telling us his story that he applied for a job on the on Facebook. He saw a job advertised for someone to work on websites in Cambodia, and he thought, and it offered a lot of perks and stuff, and he thought, this is a great opportunity. He was 16 years old. So he went over to Cambodia and ended up finding himself in this building, which was locked behind him when he came in, and his job was actually to be a scammer on these phones, and he'd had to take on a fake ID, and his ID was that of a woman, and his job was to scam people all over the world to hand over money. And what they discovered is there's thousands of Southeast Asian people being tricked into this type of thing, and they can't get out. And there's all
I'm
sorts
hearing
of
it in this
threats on their
country.
life.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so what kind of tricks can we as parents be aware of, or just if we're making these online communications to prevent things like trafficking?
That's a big one at the moment, because no matter what you go on online, like because I'm single, I have looked at the dating sites occasionally, and there's always scammers on the other end taking on a fake ID, and you pick it.
But it seems like job offers, isn't it? Like, just be cautious of job offers, do due diligence.
Yes.
Even just texts, like random texts that you can get sometimes that offer you work or whatever, and it's like, this is a scam, like straight away.
Yeah, I mean, I recently bought a house, and the actual legal team said you must ensure that you phone the firm to confirm all the payment details, because you can get emails from people claiming to be them and then send your money off to buy the house, and it's gone.
Yeah, I know. I think you just don't take anything at face value anymore. You just got to look behind it and investigate, ring.
Don't give anyone any information.
Don't give anyone any information. Don't give credit cards or even photos.
Yeah.
Keeping photos to a limit that you post on social media and
keeping home addresses, all that sort of thing private.
It's a totally new world that we're living in now, a scary world.
Yeah.
I think there's just so much you see in that environment that, like, it's disturbing, but and it carries a heavy weight. How do you deal with the weight of that?
It's funny, I get asked that a little bit, and I don't know, I think it's just in me to be able to cope with it. And I often remember when people say it to me, it's like, I can't imagine paramedics being the first on a scene to an accident scene, but they're able to go out there and do it and then come home and live a normal life and go back the next day and do it. And I think it's like that. It's I'm able to switch off and live a normal life. And
so your role in this job is, once they've brought the girls in, to rehabilitate them, is that correct?
That's not my personal role. So I'm based here in Australia now as a partnership manager.
Yeah.
So my role now is to fundraise so that we can send funds over to make sure that this work continues to happen.
Right.
So my job is to go around now speaking at churches and community events and schools and educating people on the issue, as well as encouraging them to fundraise for us.
Which is funny, because when I asked you a few questions prior to the podcast, I said, what are some of the challenges that you've overcome? And what were the two things that you mentioned? Can you remember?
I know one was public speaking.
Public speaking.
Oh, yes.
And the second one was fear of heights.
A fear of heights, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what did you do for fundraising?
So one day we decided to have a fundraiser where we jumped out of an aeroplane
Oh, my goodness.
at 14,000 feet, and I said, no way.
Yeah.
But I have a competitive spirit. So all these people at work were signing up to do it. And I thought, I'm going to kick myself if the Monday morning comes and they're all talking about what this great experience that they had, and I had chickened out.
Yeah.
So I said, if I raise any money at all, then I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I did a page, and next thing $250 landed in there, and I thought, oh no, I've got to do it. So then the funds started coming in, and I thought, well, I've got to commit to this now. But everyone else at work except one other person dropped out. So there's only 2 of us in the end that actually jumped out of a plane.
So courageous.
Wow.
Like you faced your 2 biggest fears, and now you're in a job where you've got to fundraise by doing extreme things and you've got to public speak.
I know.
And here you are on a podcast.
I know.
Public speaking.
I know.
Well done.
Can I just take you back to that moment where you said, you know, the agents, they go in, they befriend the girls, maybe take them to a McDonald's, and then they offer them a way out. Like, at that moment, does every girl want a way out, or would some refuse?
Some have refused for different reasons, for fear that what is the next step? What are we taking them to?
Yeah.
One is they've got a lot of friends too where they're working, and the family pressure too of providing money, because the whole issue of trafficking has come from poverty and lack of education. Mm-hmm. So they have no skills to do anything else. They don't have an education. They ended up getting tricked or coerced into these situations, but then the money comes in, the support, you know, the family relies on the support, so it's just this continuing thing that they can't get out of.
Yeah, right. And what are the different types of rescues?
So we have our covert rescue, which is going into the bars, pretending to be clients and taking the girls out, like I just said.
Yeah.
The other one is that we work with local law enforcement officers in these countries now. So we've got a very good relationship with the equivalent of our FBI in a number of the countries that we're working with.
Right.
So we team up with them and we gather the intel for them that an establishment or an individual is selling children. And we take that information to them, and then a raid will be organised.
So you're kind of like undercover cops.
Yes,
Wow.
exactly. Undercover agents. So then we will go out with the law enforcement on the night of the raid, and we'll be the customers in the situation of the raid, and our agents will have young girls sitting with them. Yeah. So then when the police come in, there's the girls already sitting there. So.
And how easy is it to rehabilitate them? Because I know you know my history of I've helped girls that were in prostitution in England, and they were there for very different reasons. They were there because they'd got a drug addiction or alcohol addiction of some sort. Wasn't necessarily poverty based. So is it easier to rehabilitate if we can alleviate poverty?
Yes, because that's the main reason why they do it, or they're looking for work, because they're only children. Yeah. If it wasn't for the poverty, or if they were able to get a good education, they wouldn't be out looking for jobs on the streets and then getting, coerced.
So, so for everyone that goes into the Destiny Rescue programs, they all, what percentage would actually repeat, as in fall back into that life, or is it?
Very few. So I think we have like an 83% success rate.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The others don't necessarily go back into it. They just might leave our program. And we
or if they go to families, do they get re-trafficked?
Depends. So what happens now, we used to have our own homes where we would take the girls into our homes and rehabilitate them in their homes. But we were finding that wasn't the best way to do it. So when a girl's rescued now, if it's safe to do so, we'll reintegrate her back with her family. Right. And then we will work with her family and work with the community so that it doesn't continue to happen. Yeah. But if it's not safe to do so, then we are working now with partner organisations in the countries that we're working in. Yeah. And they may have safe homes and the girls will go in there and we will run our programs.
Do you find, like when you put the girls back in with their families, do some of the families actually sell their children into sex slavery to begin with? Are you nervous that that's going to happen again?
Yeah. If that's the case, then we will never reintegrate them back with their family.
How do you know? Do the girls tell you how they got into it?
Some of them do, and we have caseworkers and counsellors too that go out and spend time with the family investigating what the situation is.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched that movie Taken?
I did
With Liam
recently.
Neeson?
Oh, did
Yes, I have a very particular set of skills that
Yeah.
make me a nightmare for people like you.
Yeah.
Love Liam Neeson
Yeah.
in that movie. But I think it's every parent's nightmare to think you send your kids overseas and, you know, they get trafficked or something like that happens. So how as parents can we ensure... In fact, I know like a friend of mine, their daughter was going over to Italy and she's going to be an au pair, and they'd connected with an au pair company and they had all these questions. Is this a legitimate company? Is she going to be safe? They're not going to escort her over there. So what checks can we do as parents to prevent that from happening?
Them going overseas to any
Well,
kind of
just
situation.
Yeah, or just to ensure that, you know, they're not in a dangerous,
Yeah,
they're not
yeah,
put in
yeah.
a dangerous situation.
Basically educating them before they go. Stranger danger, don't talk to...
Yeah,
It's hard because when you're going over to another country, you don't know a lot of people. So
yeah.
And always go with someone. Hey?
always go with someone. You
Yes.
never be on your own.
That's always been our mantra for our kids since little. Never go anywhere by yourself,
Yeah,
even in Australia.
yeah.
Like,
Especially never hop into a vehicle with anyone or go with anyone.
So basically take Liam Neeson with you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And the people who work for Destiny Rescue, do you find that they stay in the job for a long period of time, or do they burn out easily? Are the effects like, I know it's one of those areas that could really
Yeah.
quite affect you emotionally. How does that go?
We've got both, probably. We've got people, some of our agents have been with us. Like Tony, our founder, he started it in 2001.
Yeah.
He has not stopped rescuing since he started. And also another guy, Damo, who's from the Sunshine Coast here. He basically went over with Tony from the beginning. And they haven't stopped. They're so passionate. They just got to get out there and get every child that they can. And they just keep going and going and going, and their passion just keeps increasing.
Yeah.
But how can we get involved and support the work that you're doing?
The biggest thing is the funding, because without money, then the rescues don't happen. The rehabilitation doesn't happen, and these kids end up staying in the bars is basically the bottom story, or, you know, wherever they've been exploited. So it's the money thing. So the biggest thing that we need is money, and we've got our big end of financial year. It's the biggest time right now of giving to Destiny Rescue.
Yeah. And how can people do that? Well, shoot, have you got a website?
We've got a website, destinyrescue.org. We've got a phone number. You can ring the office. The head office for Destiny Rescue Australia is here on the Sunshine Coast, just a couple of blocks down the road here.
Right.
You can
And
call
they
the
can
office.
invite you to come and speak at their events?
Yes.
I'm throwing you
Love
under
to
a
do
bus there, aren't I, Nerrilee?
Yeah, but do it. Do it.
Narrowly
You're
for
not
you.
averse to danger.
For you personally, where do you see your life going from here? Is this it for you? Like you found your niche?
I think so, yeah. I say to everyone, I'm in here for life. And as far as I'm concerned, I am.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's fulfilling.
I can't see myself doing anything else. And I can't see myself ever going back to the normal 9-to-5 job and helping somebody else make money. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I've got to do something that is making a difference. And especially with children.
Yes.
You know, how can you turn your back on children?
That's
Of course. So there's so much gold here, Beck.
It really
Let's go to you.
is. Okay. So the gold I see in you, Nerrilee, is that you have found your passion and your purpose in life, that you've got this innate sense of adventure that has led you across the globe and now into this place that you're helping to save lives, and you found the space that you're meant to be in, and you'll continue to do this, as you say, which is just such a great impact, isn't it? And a great legacy for you to leave to the world, that you've just invested your life into saving the lives of younger people. So good on you. And I just, you know, pray more power to you in this area, and that more and more children are saved. It's such an important thing to be doing.
And I'm just impressed with how successful Destiny Rescue is. 85%. You don't get many charities or NGOs that actually get an 85% success rate. So it really is a valuable organisation to get behind. So if you're looking for something to support, then support Destiny Rescue.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for coming on the show
Thank
today.
you.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
I'm just like so blown away by Nerilee's story, because she just talks as if it's like every day. Oh yeah, this is just what you do. But you know, her stories of Iraq and Jordan and all that. It's just like she's got so much courage.
She's had a huge life of adventure, hasn't she?
Yeah.
And then this organisation, Destiny Rescue, saving lives. What an amazing purpose to be involved in.
It's almost like her life has layered. There's, you know, she's done some courageous things as a young woman, and then it's like you have to keep upping that and upping it and you know, to get that same experience, and to now find a purpose in Destiny Rescue. It must be so fulfilling and rewarding, because who would not want to rescue children from just such a horrible industry? Like it's disgusting. It's a disgusting part of humankind.
Yeah, but they're making a huge difference, aren't they?
And I'm really
incredible.
impressed by the results that they're seeing, because it's very rare for any NGOs to get an 85% success rate. That's huge. And definitely something worth getting behind.
Absolutely. It's proven, so it's effective.
And I just have to think, imagine if it was your kid. You know, and it could so easily be, because they get so tricked so easily. And you know, it could be any one of us in that situation. And that's the frightening thing, isn't it?
That's right. I love that she was telling us that when she was younger, she was the child in the school who didn't want to be picked out to do anything. Like she kind of hid herself back. And now her greatest fears of public speaking and heights have been overcome. But she's also really stepped out of herself, travelled the world, is doing all these amazing things with rescuing children. She hasn't wasted a minute, has she?
I think, though, when you're doing it for someone else, you actually have more strength to overcome those fears. I think if we're doing it for ourselves, we'll procrastinate. But that's the beauty of her, is the fact that is willing to face her fears, because she's not doing it for herself. She's doing it for the better of other people. And she really is making a difference in the world.
That's right. Very inspiring.
So that's it for today's podcast. You'll find us on all the major podcast platforms. The podcasts come out every Wednesday. We'd love to hear from you on our socials, the Gold Diggers Podcast. Tell us about your story so we can find the gold in you.
Easy as pie, lemon, apple or cherry. Loving you is so very sweet, sweet, sweet. How can it be such a piece of cake? And your smile is the icing. Loving you is a party. Honey, you're my sugar.
Boom, 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 boom.